Jeremiah was called on to prophesy during a dark day in Israel's history. They had broken one of the covenants. There were 8 covenants given in the Bible. A covenant was an agreement with 2 or more parties. 4 of the covenants that God made were unconditional. However, some of the covenants were conditional. There was the Edenic covenant, the Adamic covenant, the Noahic covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, the Davidic covenant, and the New Covenant. But the covenant that Israel had disobeyed was the Palestinian covenant, not to be confused with those we refer to as Palestinians today. But the Palestinian covenant is found in Deuteronomy chapter 28. The 40 years of wandering in the wilderness is over. The children of Israel is about to go into the promised land. And God makes a covenant with his people. God said, I will give you the land. I will bless the fruit of your labor. I will send down the rain, and I will fill your barns with plenty. And God said, I'll defeat all of your enemies if you walk in my commandments, put me first, obey my word. And God said, if you don't, I'll shut up the heavens. There won't be any rain. And instead of your barns being full, God said they'll be empty. And instead of defeating your enemies will oppress you and overtake you. And if you look back in chapter 11, verse 8, the Bible says, yet they obeyed not. They violated the covenant that God made with his people, the Palestinian covenant. And now God has no alternative. He's got to be true to himself. God is always faithful to his word. And because of their disobedience, they're going to experience famine and drought. Instead of their barns being full, their barns are going to be empty. And instead of God defeating their enemies, now God is about to allow their enemy to come in and overtake them. And these were the days that God told Jeremiah, I want you to prophesy. Jeremiah was the son of a priest, making him a priest. But his greatest ministry was not in the priesthood, but it was as a prophet. The prophet was God's representative to man. And sometimes the ministry of the prophet involved blessings. Sometimes the message of the prophet brought joy. But oftentimes, the message of the prophet was a message of woe and judgment and destruction. Jeremiah's message would be a message of woe and judgment and destruction. Jeremiah came on the scene about 60 years after Isaiah the prophet. It was a dark hour in Israel's history. I tell you how bad it was. Jeremiah prophesied for 40 years and saw no outward results. He didn't see anything good coming from his ministry. And he was faithful. Yet 40 years without a single convert. 40 years without seeing any positive results whatsoever. And here's the thing. There were other prophets in that day, but they brought the message the people wanted to hear. They brought a message of blessings and everything is wonderful. And the people were drawn to the false prophets while they hated and despised Jeremiah. They mocked Jeremiah. They even conspired to kill Jeremiah in his own hometown. His friends, his family wanted to kill him because Jeremiah never had anything good to say. His message was a message of judgment and wrath. But watch this. With this in mind, we go into chapter 12. And in chapter 12, Jeremiah is praying. Let me just stop right here. How many of you here today? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you not here? Raise your hand. Okay, we're doing good. We're doing good. I want you to stay with me. We're going somewhere. I promise we're going somewhere. Chapter 12 begins with Jeremiah praying. Chapter 11 closes with a conspiracy to kill Jeremiah. And this is what happens in chapter number 12. Jeremiah said, "Righteous art thou, O Lord, when I plead with thee. Righteous art thou, O Lord, when I plead with thee." Jeremiah is saying, God, you're always right. Tell you what I want you to do right now. I want you to look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor he's always right. He's always right. He's right when you don't understand it. He's right when you don't understand what he's doing. He's right when life doesn't make any sense. He's right though your heart is broken. He's right when your dreams have scattered He's right when we're wrong. It's a good day in our lives when we understand that God is always right. He is a good Father. And a good God can't do anything but good. He's always right. Righteous art thou, O Lord, when I plead with thee. Yet, let me talk with thee of thy judgments. Yet, it's like somebody coming up to you and saying, I just love you. You have been such a blessing to me. I think you're the most wonderful man or the most wonderful lady. You have just helped me so much, and I just love you with all my heart. But get ready. When somebody tells you how much they like you and how wonderful you are, and then they say, but, brace yourself. Get ready, because it's coming. Jeremiah says, Lord, I know you're righteous in all of your judgments. Yeah, I want to talk to you about that. He said, wherefore doth the way of the wicked prosper? Wherefore are all they happy that deal very treacherously? Jeremiah said, I don't understand it. I'm trying to tell the truth while the other prophets tell lies, yet they hate me and love them. Jeremiah said, I don't understand this. Everything they touch turns to gold. And yet, everything I touch turns to sorrow. Doesn't make sense. Why doth the way of the wicked prosper? Wherefore are all they happy that deal very treacherously? God, I'm trying to do right, and they don't even think about you. Doing right has never crossed their mind, yet they just go along their merry way, and life is rosy and fun all the time while they're trying to kill me. God, it doesn't make sense. They don't love you. They don't care anything about you, and yet they're having it so good and just stay up on the mountain all the time, and life is so rosy, and here I am trying to tell the truth, trying to do right, trying to live for you. Nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. I'm going to eat some worms. Jeremiah said it just doesn't make sense. Listen to what he said. Thou hast planted them, yea, they have taken root. They grow, yea, they bring forth fruit. They prosper. Thou art near in their mouth. Oh, they say the right things. And far away from their reins. And reins there is making reference to the heart. They talk a good talk, but they don't walk the walk. And they're having it so good, and I'm having it so hard. How many of you know what I'm talking about this morning? I mean, just get real, be real. I've been there. And whether you want to admit it or not, you've been there too. We've all been there. When life just doesn't seem fair. Why do others have it so good while I have it so hard? And the thing about it, you know them. They're manipulators, they're connivers. They'll lie, do whatever they need to do. And you've got too much character and too much integrity to be like them, yet everything goes good for them and nothing goes good for you. Has it ever seemed as though life just wasn't fair? Nothing turned out the way you thought it would. You're not right now where you thought you would be at this point in your life. Some of you don't have pleasant memories of your home life, even as a child. You've been in relationships that didn't go very good, that left you wounded and bleeding. Your marriage didn't turn out like you thought it would. Your children haven't turned out like you thought they would. You feel as though life has just been unfair to you. That's where Jeremiah is. Nothing that's gone right. And he's praying. But thou, O Lord, knowest me. Oh man, what a statement, what a statement, what a statement. God, you know me. I want you to look back at your neighbor again and tell your neighbor, he knows me. He knows me. He knows me. He knows you. You know what? I tried to call the governor one time, and believe it or not, I didn't get through. I told him who I was. He didn't know me. I remember years ago, I tried to call the president. I really did. I called the White House, and I was put on hold and transferred to another and put on hold and transferred to another. And finally, I was told the president is not available. Now, if I had been the prime minister of Russia, it would have probably made a difference. But I'm Craig Edwards from Mayberry. Duh. Only place I've ever been to the mailbox and back. He don't know who I am. But I'm glad he knows me. I get down to pray. He knows me. I'm not put on hold. I'm not told he's not available. He knows me. Sometimes we may think he's forgotten, but he knows you. Amen. That's right. You remember in chapter 1, I love this. God told Jeremiah, he said, before I formed you in the belly, I knew you and sanctified you and ordained you to be a prophet. Tell that to the abortionist. They believe that life begins at birth. God said, I knew who you were before you were even conceived. I knew you, and I'd already called you, and I had already ordained you, and I had already sanctified you. Your destiny was set, your course was marked before you were ever born. You know, I want to run a rabbit trail, just a little bitty short one, but it's a good one. It's a good one. Anybody here like to rabbit hunt? Amen. Okay, this is a good one. You remember when Mary went to Elizabeth and told Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist, that the angel Gabriel had appeared unto her and she was going to conceive and she was going to give birth to a son that would sit on the throne of his father David. And Elizabeth was 6 months pregnant with John the Baptist. And John the Baptist was still in his mother's womb. Are you listening? Yet when Mary started talking about Jesus, Amen. The Bible said the babe leaped in her womb.
Right. Amen.
I mean, just the mention of Jesus. John, he had a camp meeting before he was ever born. He got more emotional about Jesus than some of you have in 50 years before he was ever born. He leaped in. And you go over to the next chapter. And the angels have appeared to the shepherds and told them about Jesus. And they said, you'll find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes. Look here for just a minute. Same word. Same word. God referred to John as a babe when he was in his mother's womb. He referred to Jesus as a babe after he had been born, wrapped in swaddling clothes and laid in the manger. Same word. It doesn't matter if you're here or if you're here. A baby's a baby. That didn't cost not one dime extra. I just threw that in. Jeremiah said, you know me, you know me. He said, thou hast seen me and tried mine heart toward thee. Pull them out like sheep for the slaughter and prepare them for the day of slaughter. Jeremiah's having a bad day. Just take care of them. How long shall the land mourn and the herbs of every field wither for the wickedness of them that dwell therein? The beasts are consumed and the birds, because they said, he shall not see our last end. We can get by. Nothing is going to happen. This covenant stuff is just hocus pocus. He's not going to see our end. Nothing's going to happen. And Jeremiah said, because of them, we're all suffering. God, just take care of them. Now we come to verse 5. And God is talking to Jeremiah. Verses 1 through 4, Jeremiah is talking to God, but in verse 5, and here's my message, and I'm almost done and just now getting to my text. If thou hast run with the footmen, and they have wearied thee, then how canst thou contend with horses? And if in the land of peace wherein thou trustest they wearied thee, then how wilt thou do in the swelling of the Jordan, or beyond Jordan, on the other side of Jordan? Now what's God saying? What does all this mean? God said, if you've run with a footman, people that are on their feet, you've contended with other people in a race. How many of you ever been in a race of some kind, a foot race? Raise your hand. I'm going to tell you something. I've never been first for anything in my life. I am slow. I was born slow. I tell everybody, my mama carried me 15 months before I was born. I'm just slow. I didn't get my birthmark until I was about 8 years old. I'm just slow. My daddy used to tell me he had to line me up with a telephone pole or a tree to see whether or not I was moving. I've just always been slow, and I figured out why I'm so slow. I walk too long in the same place. My kids used to have me run just so they could laugh. I've never been first. But some of you have run in a race. And it's tough. You ever run in a race and you're exhausted? You ever run in a race and you just say, man, I got to find a place to sit down. I remember Presley was in some kind of race, and people, the kids, as they were crossing the finish line, some of them were throwing up, and when Presley came across the finish line, man, she just fell on the ground. Now God is saying, Jeremiah, what you've experienced up to now is like running with footmen. You're racing against other people on foot. And God said, if they've wearied thee, if running with a footman have caused you to, God said, what you going to do when the horses come? How are you going to run against the horses? The Lord said, the horses are coming. And if you're struggling now, in the time of peace, what you going to do in the swelling of the Jordan? Or what are you going to do when you're carried to the other side of the Jordan? Let me just give you three things about this verse. Number one, it deals with Jeremiah's faithfulness. If thou hast run with a footman, he did run with a footman. He did run with a footman. And it's though God is saying, Jeremiah, I'm going to give you credit where credit is due. You have run with a footman. You've been hated. People have mocked you. They have laughed you. As a matter of fact, Jeremiah became the subject of all their jokes. He was the laughing stock of the people. But God said, even though it hasn't been easy, you've made it. You've run with a footman. You've made it. And God gave Jeremiah credit for running with a footman. I don't know what you've been through. There's probably people here this morning that you grew up and things were not good at home. And even as a child, you experienced tragedy. And even as a child, you experienced trauma. Maybe you don't have good memories of your mom, or maybe you don't have good memories of your dad. And you don't have good memories of your childhood. But guess what? You made it. You made it. You're here. Maybe your marriage didn't turn out right. Maybe you were betrayed by the one you gave your heart to. Used and abused. But you know what? You made it. Maybe you grew up poor, grew up hard, and nothing's changed. You're still struggling financially. You still struggle with paying your bills. But do you know what? You've made it. You've made it. You've run with a footman. You've made it. So this verse touches on Jeremiah's faithfulness. If thou hast run with the footmen. Jeremiah, you've run with the footmen. They wearied thee even after running with the footmen. You ever felt like that? You ever been in, as it were, a race and you just didn't feel like you were going to make it to the end? You ever faced something and you just said, I remember I used to think all the time, if something happened to my mom and daddy, I don't know what I would do. I dreamed about giving up my mom or giving up my dad. And just the very thought of it was unbearable. But you know what? I gave up my mom. I gave up my dad. I made it. I made it. Hasn't been easy, but I made it. I made it. You ever been through something you just didn't think you were going to make it? And while you're fighting and panting for breath and wondering, how can I go on? How can I continue? But you did. Thou hast run with the footmen, and they have wearied thee. Talks about Jeremiah's feebleness. They've wearied thee. Jeremiah was discouraged. He was very discouraged. As a matter of fact, at one point in Jeremiah's ministry, he tried to quit. He actually did. He said, I'm not going to speak in the Lord's name anymore. I'm done. I'm through. Imagine how you'd feel 40 years of preaching with no converts. 40 years of preaching and no results. 40 years of preaching, and the only thing you got back from it was being hated and despised and laughed at and in prison, and your own friends and family is trying to kill you and get rid of you. Jeremiah was discouraged. He was feeble. And God said to Jeremiah, this is the good times. You know, a lot of people find it difficult to serve God right now in a time of peace. You've got your health. A lot of people find it difficult to put God first, even though they've got a good job, they have a good income. They find it difficult to put God first, even though God's given them a family, a good place to live. And you know how we are as far as our spiritual walk is concerned? Wearied. Talk about how hard it is. Man, it's so hard to serve God. It's so hard to put God first. It's so hard to live right. So hard to be faithful to church with everything that's going on. So hard. So hard to give, and by the time I make my camper payment, my boat payment, and the payment on my new truck, I don't have much left. So hard. Hello? I'm telling the truth whether you want to admit it or not. This verse touches on Jeremiah's feebleness, and they have wearied thee. But it also makes reference to God's foreknowledge. Look at it. How canst thou contend with horses? Jeremiah, you've been running against footmen. What you gonna do when they bring the horses out? And you have to run against the horses. You think it's bad now? Oh, by the way, the horses were coming. Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, he was getting ready to come down on Judah. The city of Jerusalem was about to be destroyed. Their temple was about to be destroyed. The vessels were about to be stolen, and the children of Israel, including Jeremiah, was about to be taken as prisoners. And they were getting ready to be taken to Babylon, which is beyond Jordan. God said, Jeremiah, you're struggling now. You're having a hard time now. What are you going to do when the horses get here? God said, Jeremiah, you're living in the good times. What are you going to do when it really gets rough? My question would be to all of us, if we have a problem serving God now, what are we going to do when it gets tough? And by the way, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. Jesus said that evil men and seducing spirits would wax worse and worse. Because iniquity shall abound, the love of many will wax cold. This know also that in the last days perilous times will come. Children will be haters of their parents, proud, boasters, blasphemers. God said the day's coming when men will have a form of godliness but deny the power thereof. The day of the Lord shall not come except there come a falling away first. It's going to get worse. And my question is, if we have a hard time being faithful to church, if we have a hard time living for God, if we have a hard time putting God first in our lives now, what are you going to do when the horses come? Did you know in China, communist China, the church meets underground? They have to smuggle Bibles in. And we don't even read our Bibles now. What are you going to do if someone comes into your home to inspect it and they find a Bible and you go to jail? You said, preacher, you can't be real. Oh wait, yeah, I'm real. Whoever dreamed that the state of California would vote to become a gender-free state? I'm serious. It's ridiculous. Serious. That's the truth. You know what they call they don't call them manholes anymore. Those plates, that lead to the tunnels under, they call them maintenance holes. When a child is born, it's not marked as a male or a female. It's neutral. Giving the child an opportunity to decide what it wants to be. In Spartanburg, South Carolina, Not long ago, if I can say this right, the LB, help me out, GT, whatever. What is it? LGBT, lesbians, bisexual, gays, transgenders. They've already started a youth center. And oh yeah, they've started them all across America. They're already producing children's books. And one opened in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And do you know where they're meeting? In the basement of a Baptist church. That's what our kids are going to be faced with. That's what our kids are going to deal with. If you're having a problem putting God first now, what are you going to do then? I'm telling you, it's not far down the road. We'll lose our tax exempt status. It's just a matter of time. Unless we go along with the homosexuals, unless we go along with the theory of evolution, unless we go along with abortion. You say, preacher, how could you say that? Because it's already happened all around the world. Just a matter of time. Yet we have trouble putting God first now. In those Muslim countries, there is a revival going on. There's a revival going on in China. You know what? There's a revival going on in countries where Christianity is being oppressed. And the only country where Christianity is dying is in America. We've been blessed. We've got houses, good jobs, all kinds of toys. As a matter of fact, we're so occupied with the blessings, we've forgotten all about the blesser.
That's right. Yes, sir.
We're more concerned about what he gives than who he is. Which excites you most? What God has given you, or just who God is?
Yeah.
It is good. It is good. And yet, our churches are dying. People are not interested. Even professing Christians have become cold and complacent. Yep. My question is, if we're having a hard time contending against the footmen, what are you going to do when the horses come? In the revival that's going on in these Muslim countries, pastors of those underground churches are being arrested by the Muslims, and they are tortured. All they've got to do is denounce their faith in Jesus and proclaim their allegiance to Allah. And these pastors watch as their wives and daughters are raped. Watched as gasoline is thrown on their families and burned alive. And they're next. If we can't even run with a footman, what are you going to do when somebody puts a pistol in the back of your head and said, denounce Jesus or else? You say, preacher, I won't deny him. You listen to me. I'm not smart. I've been in ministry for 52 years, and I've learned a few things accidentally. If you're not willing to live for him, there's no way you'll die for him. God said, Jeremiah, you've run with a footman and they've wearied you. What are you going to do when it gets bad? When times really get hard? God let Jeremiah run with a footman. And I'm done. You can stand. Brother Sean, y'all can go ahead and come. I'm done. But get this, it's huge, it's huge, it's huge. God let Jeremiah run with the footman to get him ready, to prepare him, because the horses were coming. God got him ready. You know, the most important thing about running a race is not entering the race. Anybody can sign up. It's about preparing yourself, being ready. And God allowed Jeremiah to run with a footman to get him ready, because times are going to get rough. Hey, you listen to me. It's going to get rough. We haven't seen the tip of the iceberg of this gay rights movement. When it became legal across America, it opened up doors that we haven't even thought about being opened. God's getting us ready. And what I need to be doing, and what you need to be doing, is asking ourselves, how am I doing? How am I doing? How am I doing running with a footman? Because the horses are coming. They're coming. I may not live to see it, Brother Dewey. You might not live to see it. I don't know. Some of us older ones may not live to see it. Our kids probably will. Our children will. Yeah. Your grandkids, yeah, they'll see it. You know what we need to be thinking about? How are we going to prepare them if we're not ready ourselves? We're going to sing a verse of a song. You know, we've had professed homosexuals to visit our services, and you know what I do? I love on them and let them know how happy I am they're here. I celebrate them being here. They're like I used to be. I used to be lost. And there aren't degrees in being lost. When you're lost, you're just lost. And they need what I needed and what you needed. They just needed Jesus. I'm glad he's able. I'm not against the homosexual. I don't want you to leave with that impression. The only reason I say what I say is because of what God said. God said it's not right. It's against nature. Be that as it may. Well, what are we going to do when the going gets tough? They're going to sing, I'm done, I promise. But I can tell you how if you can't make it with a footman, if you can't make it now, then you're not going to make it when the horses come. I can tell you that right now. You're not going to make it. Could be that God has spoken to you. I pray that he has. If God speaks to you just a portion of how he has spoken to me as I studied these verses, it will be awesome. We're going to sing. If you need to do business with God this morning, this altar's open.